Look, sit down, because here comes the story. It all begins with a painter named Basil Hallward, a talented guy, the kind who looks at the canvas and immediately begins to work magic with brush and paint. Well, Basil had a favorite model, a boy named Dorian Gray. And let me tell you, Dorian wasn't just handsome. He was so handsome that even birds stopped singing to watch. One day, Basil invites Dorian to pose in his studio. The atmosphere is chic, the light is just right, and the painter's brush seems inspired by the universe. Until the third element of this story appears, Lord Henry Wotton. Now that was a rare find. A true philosopher of the good life, the kind who says things like, "Young man, life is too short to worry. Enjoy it. Be beautiful, be happy, and above all, don't waste time on morality." Imagine the impact this had on Dorian, who already had a magazine cover face. He was mesmerized by Lord Henry's ideas, as if he'd discovered the secret manual for eternal youth. And it was then that, seeing the finished painting, which, by the way, was spectacular, worthy of hanging in the Queen's room, Dorian uttered the phrase that changed everything. "Ah, if I could remain forever young, and if it were this portrait that grew old in my place." There you go. Wish granted. No candle, no cauldron, no lightning bolt. Just an innocent wish, but one full of consequences. The kind of wish where you only realize the trouble when it's too late. And so ends the first chapter of this Gothic novel with the feel of high society gossip, a painter passionate about art, a young man who didn't want to lose his youth, and a talkative friend who threw dangerously charming ideas into the air. So remember that weird wish Dorian made, like someone who says, "Oh, I wish I'd won the lottery"? Well, guess what? The universe, which loves a prank, decided to oblige. Time passed, and surprise, Dorian still had the same soap commercial face. Meanwhile, the portrait, the same one painted by Basil, began to show signs that something was off. A wrinkle here, a sour expression there. It seemed the painting was paying life's bills instead of Dorian. And look how interesting, with every choice Dorian made, every moral slip, every time he thought, "Oh, I'll just enjoy life for a bit and then see what happens," the portrait grew more bleak. It's not like he was going to turn into a monster, but you know that Monday morning look without coffee? So, it was something like that. The funniest thing is that Dorian, instead of being scared, thought it was awesome. Just imagine, he could eat chocolate cake every day, stay up all night at parties, laugh at his friends who kept showing up with gray hair, and he was still standing strong, just like when he had his portrait taken. It was as if he'd been granted a free pass to eternal youth, only with a hidden clause. Everything dubious he did didn't appear on his face, but on canvas. The portrait became a kind of mirror of the soul, albeit an unflattering one, by the way. And so, our Dorian discovered he had a powerful secret. A secret no one could know. After all, how do you explain to visitors that your painting is getting older instead of you? It's the kind of thing you can't even post on Instagram with the caption "new filter." In short, Dorian got the gift everyone dreams of, but it came with a footnote he hadn't read yet. And spoiler alert, that footnote is going to be a pain. Well, my dear listener, Dorian Gray, besides being handsome and eternally young, also had plenty of time to live adventures of the heart. And it was in this atmosphere that he met Sybil Vane, a talented actress, at least when she was inspired, who shone on the stages of a more modest theater. Dorian, no fool, was enchanted. It was as if he'd found the muse who would give meaning to his life. He watched her plays and even went out reciting Shakespeare in the streets, believing he was living a romance worthy of poetry. And look. Sybil fell in love too, of course. After all, who could resist a boy who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a perfume poster? But then a curious detail happened. The day Dorian decided to take his friends to see the play, poor Sybil messed up. It was as if I'd forgotten all my talent at home. Her performance was so dull it felt like a school rehearsal. Dorian, who had hoped to impress the audience with the future star, was, how can I put it, a little disappointed. And then comes the problem. Instead of offering support, he uttered those harsh words, like those of someone who forgets that romance also requires patience. Sybil was devastated, as if she'd been doused with cold water right in the middle of the most important scene. That same night, Dorian returns home and comes face to face with the portrait. And guess what? The painting had changed again. It was no longer just a tired expression. Now there was a different shadow in the painted gaze, as if to say, "My dear, you were cruel to someone who didn't deserve it." It was the first time Dorian realized that the portrait wasn't just aging, but also recording the traces of his every heartless gesture. A kind of visual diary, but written in dark circles and bitter expressions. He was impressed, even a little scared. But instead of thinking, "Wow, I'm going to be a better person," guess what? He started to think that maybe this was interesting. After all, no one else saw the change but him. It was the kind of secret that spiced up life, you know? And so Dorian's passion took on a dramatic tone, like Sybil's plays, full of beautiful promises, but with a rather awkward ending. The painting, in turn, was there, recording every line of the story, like a diary that never lies. Ah, my friend, if before Dorian was just experiencing the taste of eternal youth, now he's fully embraced the good life. Just imagine, everyone around him is aging, getting a few gray hairs, a few lines, and him? Just like the day Basil finished the portrait. Not a hair out of place. And that's when Dorian thought, well, if the universe gave me this gift, I'm going to take advantage of it. And he really took advantage of it. He became a regular at the fanciest parties, always the center of attention, always with that magazine cover look. People were intrigued. How come this guy never changes? What's his secret? Cream? Diet? Coconut water? Little did they know that the real spa was hidden behind a painting in the attic. Meanwhile, the portrait. Oh, poor portrait. Every questionable choice Dorian made, every extravagance, every blunder, it all appeared on the canvas. The painted face grew more and more complex, like a before and after version of one of those gossip magazines. Except the before was Dorian, and the after was the tired face of someone who'd spent 3 consecutive nights partying. But here's the thing, only Dorian saw this. To the rest of the world, he was the Prince Charming who seemed to have discovered the fountain of youth. And do you know what happened? People around him began talking about him in mysterious tones. He's charming, but there's something strange about him. No one stays like this their whole life, it's impossible. Dorian, of course, didn't care. For him, it was like playing a video game on No Lives Lost. He could make mistakes, exaggerate, play with situations, and still look beautiful. The portrait had to turn around to hold the weight of his conscience. And so Dorian's life entered that phase of pure vanity and excess. He collected experiences like someone collecting rare figurines. But each new figurine made the painting heavier, darker. It was as if the canvas was becoming so heavy that he almost wanted to cover it with a cloth. In short, Dorian was living as if it were eternal summer, but the portrait was trapped in an endless winter. And isn't it that Dorian's good life started to get into trouble? Well, it is. Because, you see, a secret kept too long always causes a headache. And his wasn't a small one. He had a painting hidden in the attic that looked like a malicious caricature of his own conscience. One day Basil, remember the painter, that friend who painted the portrait and who always had a special affection for Dorian, decides to pay a visit. He was already wary. After all, everyone was saying, that boy never changes. What's the secret? Basil, who was no fool, thought, there's something wrong with this. Once there, he insists on seeing the famous painting, because he painted it himself, and artists love to revisit their work. Dorian tries to stall, changing the subject, offering tea, showing off the new furniture, but Basil is determined. And Dorian, already a little impatient, finally shows it to him. When Basil saw the painting, oh my friend, he almost dropped his cup. The portrait was unrecognizable. That once perfect face now had a strange, grim expression, as if it were a reflection of everything Dorian had done wrong in his life. It was the kind of image you look at and think, that's not going to get any likes on Instagram. Basil is shocked and tries to talk, saying something like, Dorian, my dear, this isn't normal. Maybe it's time to change, to reconsider your ways, to, I don't know, have some chamomile tea and reflect. But Dorian, instead of thinking, wow, that's true, I need to improve, goes into defensive mode. Because, let's face it, no one likes looking in the mirror that reveals not only wrinkles, but also the choices we'd like to forget. The portrait, increasingly ugly and burdened, became a huge burden for Dorian. It was like having a secret diary that not only records his confessions, but also illustrates them in high definition. A true oil painting. And from that moment on, Dorian realized that hiding the painting wasn't enough. The problem wasn't the painting, it was himself. But admitting it was harder than giving up candy on a Monday. Now, my friend, hold your breath because the story is reaching its climax. Just imagine, Dorian was already tired of carrying that secret. The portrait hidden in the attic seemed like another unwanted visitor. The more time passed, the uglier it became. I didn't even want to peek, because it was like opening your browser history. There's always something you don't want to remember. Every time Dorian went up to take a peek, he came back more uncomfortable. The painting seemed to laugh in his face. Look what you've done, young man. It was like having a 4K conscience, without a mute button. Until one day, Dorian thinks, enough. I'm going to solve this once and for all. He looks at the painting, takes a deep breath, and decides he no longer wants this nagging reminder hanging over his life. So, in a moment of courage mixed with desperation, he grabs a knife, the kind you use for fancy decor, nothing fancy, and goes for the painting. And that's when the unexpected happens. Instead of getting rid of the problem turns against him. When the servants enter the room after hearing the noise, they find a jaw-dropping scene. The painting is beautiful again, just like the first day, showing Dorian young, perfect, radiant. And on the floor? There's Dorian, but now with his face all aged, full of marks that time would have left naturally if he hadn't made that crazy wish. It was as if, by trying to erase the portrait, he'd given back to himself all the years he tried to cheat. Moral of the story? You can't cheat time. You can even fight off wrinkles, use anti-aging cream, drink green tea, but conscience? Oh, it always finds a way to show up. And so ends the saga of Dorian Gray, a young man who wanted to be eternally beautiful succeeded, but forgot to read the fine print of his contract with fate. The result? The painting was as good as new, but he, poor guy, became his before self from the face cream ad. So that's today's video. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the next story.